Hello, dears. I'm going to try to run through a quick little review for y'all so that you don't feel like you missed out on any information that was given on the few days that y'all missed. So just don't forget you do have to take your test tomorrow at 8 a.m. in the morning. So make sure you're there because I don't want you to get shortchanged on time. Okay? So, all right, we're doing photosynthesis and cellular respiration this chapter. So, the big things that you need to remember: photosynthesis takes an inorganic carbon, so in this case, carbon dioxide and water. It mixes with light energy, right? You have to have light energy in photosynthesis for it to happen. It can't happen without light, okay? So, carbon dioxide and water mixed with light energy, and it produces glucose and oxygen, right? So glucose is the sugar that's produced, and oxygen is the breathable oxygen that we get to breathe. So that's broad strokes. So in the more detailed part, the carbon dioxide comes from the air, right? The water gets soaked up from the root. So the photosynthesis happens in the chloroplast, right? The main organelle is the chloroplast where photosynthesis takes place, which is where all the green stuff is, right? That's where the chlorophyll is. So inside the thylakoid, in the chlorophyll, which is that one singular little membrane, remember the stacks of them are called the grana, or like multiple stacks of the grana. One stack is a granum. But in that first reaction, the light cycle, or the light dependent reaction, it happens inside the thylakoid, where the CO2 and the water and the light mix together. Well, the glucose gets made, and then, wait, no, I skipped ahead too much, I'm sorry. So that first light dependent reaction happens inside the thylakoid, right? So then, once that reaction takes place, it goes out into the stroma, which is the space around the thylakoid, right? So that is the Calvin cycle. Okay, so that's the light independent reaction, okay? Where it doesn't have to have the light part to happen, but the light dependent reaction happened first. So the second step of photosynthesis is the Calvin cycle, and it happens in the stroma, is the space outside the thylakoid. And so that's when all of the oxygen gets produced, and that's when the glucose is used and or not used but produced. And so then you've got photosynthesis. That's the broad strokes of how that happens, right? So you take carbon dioxide, water, and light, and you get glucose and oxygen, okay? So now in order to write that, you have to have 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O. Light energy yields C6H12O6 plus 6O2. Here, I wrote it so you could see it. Okay, that's what it looks like balanced. So 6 carbon dioxides plus 6 waters with light energy. Light energy could also be written plus light energy, and then it yields C6H12O6, which is glucose, plus 6 O2s, which is oxygen. Remember, chemical equations don't count unless they're balanced, okay? So now, what type of organisms undergo photosynthesis? Those are autotrophs, which have to use light energy to create their own food, right? They don't ingest their food, they create their own. Trying to make sure I don't miss anything. Dun-dun-dun-dun. So cellular respiration is kind of the flip side. So cellular respiration is taking glucose and making it usable energy for heterotrophic organisms, or the organisms that have to ingest their food or eat their food in order to get energy, okay? So you start with glucose and oxygen, It undergoes cellular respiration, which has 3 steps, and I'll get into that in a second. And that produces 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O plus ATP. So what is ATP? It's energy, right? So this C6H12O6 plus 6 oxygens undergoes cellular respiration and gives us 6 carbon dioxides, 6 waters, and ATP. This is the main offshoot of this, okay? What is ATP? ATP is adenosine triphosphate. Now remember, how do we get energy from that? One of those phosphate bonds breaks and energy is released, right? So cellular respiration has 3 steps. Glycolysis, remember that's the breakdown of the sugar, of the glucose, right? So glucose gets broken down into what? Pyruvate, right? Glucose gets broken down into pyruvate. Pyruvate then goes into step 2, which is the Krebs cycle, okay? So we're not getting into the nitty-gritty of the steps of the Krebs cycle, but what you need to know is this. Pyruvate gets broken down into carbon dioxide, which is an offshoot, it's a byproduct of cellular respiration, and electron carriers, okay? That's that NADH and FADH2. And those go into the 3rd step, which is the electron transport chain, okay? That's your 3rd step. So the 3rd step produces the most energy, okay? So your 1st step gives you about 2 ATP. Your 2nd step gives you about 2 ATP. Your 3rd step, that electron transport chain, gives you about 32 to 34 ATP, okay? So that's moving and grooving on the energy. So that's what you need to remember for that. And where does this all take place? So mostly it's in the mitochondria, but glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm. Then the pyruvate goes into the mitochondria and undergoes the Krebs cycle and then the electron transport chain. So the majority of it happens in the mitochondria, but the 1st step happens in the cytoplasm, okay? Aerobic and anaerobic respiration, remember that those 2 things, one needs oxygen, one doesn't. So remember, aerobic needs air, right? Aerobic, air. Aerobic needs oxygen. Anaerobic does not. It is the respiration without oxygen present. So it doesn't give off as much ATP, right? You got to have that oxygen to have the full effect. And then fermentation is a type of anaerobic respiration. Remember, there's alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation, I believe is what I told y'all. Which is the lactic acid fermentation is when we have cramps in our muscles. Like we don't have enough of what we need to get, we can't catch a breath, so we're cramping really bad because our muscles are breaking down things that they're not supposed to be. So, let's see. I think I covered everything. I'm trying to double check. Metabolism is the chemical reactions in a cell. Remember the 1st and 2nd law of thermodynamics. The first, energy can't be created or destroyed. Remember, we're not God, we're not that cool. But remember, thermo is temperature, right? So remember, the 2nd law is heat. Energy is released, gives off heat, right? That's why you get hot when you exercise. Make sure you look at the diagrams that I posted on Google Classroom. I'm not going to ask you to label everything. I'm just going to ask you to label what I asked you to label in your notes, okay? If you have any questions, please email me. I was able to at least give y'all an extra day since y'all missed the review days. We can't push the test back any further than tomorrow morning. So I'm trying to make y'all this video so that you don't feel like you got shortchanged on the review. If you have any questions, please email me. I'm more than happy to help. I love you. Good luck. I have car line first thing in the morning, but then after that, like from 7:30 to 7:50, and then after that, I will be available for any questions that you have on the test. Okay, I love you. Study hard. You got this. I have so much faith in you. Bye.